Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Bissell. We are here today to do a lesson that is not in your book. So you will need a couple sheets of paper and a pencil. So if you don't have any notebook or graph paper with you, just pause the video, go get some, and then come back. So our essential question for today is, how can you find the unknown edge of a rectangular prism if you know the volume and the measurements of two edges? So we're going to come back to this in just a second, but let's do a quick review of the last 2 days' lessons, yesterday in particular. So when we talk about volume, we are talking about the number of cubic units needed to pack a solid figure without gaps or overlays. And we talked about rectangular prisms, and we talked about some of the special rectangular prisms that are called cubes. So let's just take a look at this. Unlike our introductory lesson on day 1, lesson 11.1, we're not going to be able to count the unit cubes to determine the volume. So we're going to do some review work from lesson 11.2 where we used the volume formulas. So let's take a look at this first rectangular prism. I see that I'm given 3 linear lengths. I'm given the length, the width, and the height. So I'm going to use the formula volume equals length times width times height. And we abbreviate it pretty much with the beginning letter of each of those words or each of those measurements. So I need you to make sure that you are always writing the volume formula first. The next step is to fill in or to plug in the values. So we're looking for the volume. All right. We know the length. The length is 8 yards, and when I look at this rectangular prism, the length is pretty much the length of the front facade or the front face. So I have 8 yards times the width front to back, 6 yards, times the height, 7 yards. All right. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 2 numbers that are beside each other, or I could rearrange them using the associative property, but I am just going to multiply 8 times 6. So the volume would be 8 times 6 is 48. Now, you noticed I put parentheses around that. That's letting whoever's looking at my work understand that I multiplied these 2 numbers to get 48. I still have not multiplied times 7. Okay? The next step is going to be to multiply 48 times 7. I'm going to drop down to the side. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 4 is 28. And I add 5 to get 33. So my volume is 336 cubic yards. And I can write this with the exponent notation. So what that means is that I can fit 336 cubes inside this rectangular prism if the cubes measure 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard. And I like students to box in their work. Okay. Now, the second formula that we worked with for lesson 11.2 was in a scenario like this. We have a rectangular prism. I don't see 3 linear measurements like I did above. What I see is 6 square centimeters is this area right here. And that's what we call the base. It could be any of the faces. It's typically the one that you sit it on. That's why they call it the base, but it could be any of the sides. But somebody has already multiplied 2 of the side measurements. If you think about area, length times width gives you the area, and it's the number of squares that fit in that 2-dimensional face. So somebody's already figured it out. So I don't need to worry about that. I'm going to use the formula volume equals base times height. Since somebody's already figured this out, and it's a dead giveaway when you see square units, then I can go ahead and for the base put the 6. Somebody's already done my work. They've multiplied 2 numbers together to get 6. It was probably 2 times 3, but it could have been 6 times 1. All right, and then the height is 8 centimeters. This problem would have one less step because we have two numbers to multiply instead of 3. And 6 times 8 is 48 centimeters cubed. So what that means is we could fit 48 1-centimeter cubes inside this rectangular prism. So two formulas that we used to find volume yesterday. So we're looking for the volume, and those were the formulas. Today we're going to take it a little differently, and we're going to have a known volume. And boys and girls, we're going to look for one of the missing sides, one of the missing edges. So let's go back. Our question was, how can you find the unknown edge of a rectangular prism if you know the volume and the measurements of two of the edges? All right, so we're going to be using those formulas again. So again, I'm going to start with my volume formula. Volume equals length times width times height. I see two of my known edges, two lengths. I'm looking for the width, and I know the volume. So when I plug in the values, the volume is 150 cubic. Sorry, I even have a boo-boo right there. It's supposed to be 150 cubic centimeters. Look at Miss Basel's mistake. All right, and then I have the length across the front, corner to corner, 10 centimeters. I don't know the width, so I'm going to leave that W. And I do know the height, top to bottom, 5 centimeters. All right, so right now, I still can't solve anything. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as 10 times 5 times W. I'm using the associative property of multiplication. I'm moving my factors around and regrouping them a little bit differently, but I'm doing that because I want to be able to multiply 10 times 5 and get 50 times the width. Now, when I get to this step right here, I am almost ready to solve. And I'm going to kind of go back and review fact families. So we have the numbers 50 and 150. So I want you to think about this. If we have the numbers 50 and 150, and we're going to multiply some number times 50 to equal 150, then this is what I have. I'm going to have the width times 50 equals 150, right? Or I'm going to have 50 times the width equals 150. Or I'm going to have 150 divided by the width will equal 50. Or I would have 150 divided by 50 equals the width. Now, the one that stands out to me, except for the fact that this one's pretty easy to do some mental math, is this one right here. I can solve that right now. All right, I know that that 15 divided by 5 is 3. So 150 divided by 50 should be 3, right? So using a little bit of fact knowledge and that inverse operation, inverse means the opposite of multiplication. If I take what's the product right here, and if I make it the dividend and divide it by one of the factors, which is now going to be the divisor, I can now solve. So 150, we just did that. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So 150 divided by 50 is 3. So I get that the width equals 3. And what is it? It's a linear unit, each of these. So the width is going to equal 3 centimeters. Now, if I want to check it, I need to multiply the length times the width times the height. So let's just do that real quick. 5 times 10 is 50, times 3 is 150. There it is. You can check that real quick with a calculator. Now, I don't mind. You're going to get some large numbers on your homework. I really don't mind if you use your calculator tonight to help you with multiplying and dividing, as long as you show the work each step of the way. I should see all the work. All right, let's look at another one. Right here, we have a rectangular prism. I'm going to leave that one so we can kind of look at it. We're going to start with our formula, volume equals length times width times height. We're going to plug in the values. The volume is 625 cubic meters. The length is what I don't know, so I'm going to leave the length as the L. I don't know. The width, front to back, is 5 meters, and the height is 5 meters. All right, so as it's written, I can multiply these two numbers together. So I get 625 equals the length times 25. So here's where I'm going to want to use that fact family. So if I take 625 and divide it by 25, remember I'm going to use that opposite operation. And what I end up doing is it's called isolating the variable. The variable is the letter L. A variable is a letter that stands for an unknown number. So if I isolate it by itself, then I should be able to solve it. All right. So that one right there, you have not learned how to divide by two-digit divisors. So I'm really fine if you want to use a calculator and you just take your 625, divide it by 25, and you get 25. So the length is 25. 25 what? What's your unit of measure? Your unit of measure is meters. So your length is 25 meters. Now I want you to look at that figure. This rectangular prism would be a very special kind of rectangular prism if the length is 5, the width is 5, and the height is 5. Wouldn't that be your cube? All right. Now, think about those. If you need to go back and look at those again, you can always rewind the video and slow me down. All right, let's look at another one. So this time, I'm going to start with my formula. Volume equals length times width times height. And I was trying to say that this time we're missing the height. So the volume is 144 cubic centimeters. The length I've got right here, 6 centimeters. The width, front to back, is 2 centimeters. And I'm solving for the height. Okay. Now, I can I write any numbers I'm not using, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply the 6 times the 2. They're right there together. That gives me 12. So 12 times some number is going to give me 144. Well, this should be pretty easy if you know your times tables, but remember, we're going to isolate the variable by using the inverse operation, and that's really just using our fact family knowledge, and we're really dividing that product by one of the factors. And see how that variable, that letter is isolated? All right, if you know your times tables, you know that 144 divided by 12 is what? It's 12. So the height is 12. So in this problem, we're going to write the answer as the height equals 12 what? Top to bottom, unit of measure, centimeters. All right, if you want to check it in your calculator, just multiply. Put it in. See if 6 times 2 times 12 equals 144. If it equals 144, you plugged in the values, you multiplied, and it gave you the volume you're supposed to have. All right, let's look at another one. And again, on the video, you have the option of pausing me and going back. All right, here we go. This is a different kind of, it looks like it's laying sideways, this rectangular prism. We're going to start with the volume formula. Volume equals length times width times height. I know the volume's 100 cubic centimeters. The length I don't know, so we're going to leave that variable L. The width, 2 centimeters. The height is 5. All right, still not doing anything with the 100 or the equal. The length I don't know, but I can put parentheses around 2 times 5, and I multiply it to get 10. So now is that next step. I'm going to do a division fact to isolate the variable. So this is what I'm going to do. 100 divided by 10 equals the length. Oh, well, 100 divided by 10 equals 10, right? So the length is 10, and it's going to be 10 centimeters. So the length equals 10 centimeters. So from here to here, 10 centimeters. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So we have volume equals length times width times height. Boys and girls, I want you writing that formula every time. You should be writing area formulas every time and volume formulas every time. All right, the volume is 63 cubic feet. I just need the number 63. The length, there it is, 7 feet. The width, I don't know, so I'm going to leave the W, and the height is 9 feet. All right, this is one where I need to use the commutative property and move some things around. I really need the two knowns beside each other, all right, because I'm going to multiply them together. So 7 times 9 is 63 times the width. All right, so using division, this is really not that difficult. 63 divided by 63, any number divided by itself equals 1, right? So the width equals 1 foot. Okay? All right, that's a very narrow rectangle prism compared to the length and the height. All right, here's an interesting looking rectangular prism. Again, we start with that volume formula. All right, the volume is given as 96 cubic yards. The length I see is 12 yards. The width I see is 2 yards. And the height is unknown. So we leave that variable, we leave that h. All right, we copy down 96 equals because we're not ready to solve. I can go ahead and multiply 12 times 2. That's 24 times the height. All right, now think about what you're going to do. You want to isolate the variable, right? So you're going to use the opposite operation, and you're going to take 96, and if you divide 96 by 24, it gives you that missing factor. So 96 divided by 24, you're welcome to use a calculator. I know you don't know how to divide by a 2-digit divisor quite yet. If you use a calculator, you get 4. So what that means is 4 yards is the height, right? And to check it, plug in your values. See if 4 times 12 times 2 gives you 96. Let's do one more, make sure we understand this concept. So this one, I'm getting ready to write my formula, but I noticed something. Wait a minute. I have something different going on. I have the base measurement already given to me in square inches. So what that means is somebody's already multiplied 2 of my edges, probably the length and the width. So I'm going to use the volume equals base times height formula. Put a little star by there. This one's different. All right, the volume is 96 cubic inches. The base is 8 square inches, and I'm looking for the height. So we're going to use our fact family knowledge, and we're going to isolate the variable the h by dividing 96 by the factor 8 to find that missing factor. Now, 96 divided by 8 is 12. So the height is 12 inches. And if you want to check it, then what we need to do is we need to multiply 8 times 12 and see if that gives us 96. And it does. All right, so when we don't know one of the side lengths, but we know the volume and we know the other 2 side lengths, or we know the base, we can find the missing edge. So your work should look like my work on notebook or graph paper, and it should be stapled on your unknown edges handout. So let's just review. The question is, how can you find the unknown edge of a rectangular prism if you know the volume and the measurements of 2 edges? And I hope you're able to answer that you're going to use your volume formula, you're going to plug in your known values, and right when you get to your multiplication sentence where you need that missing factor, you're going to use your fact family and division to isolate the variable and to solve, right? All right. I hope you boys and girls have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Your assignment is not in the book. It is not on the online practice buddy. Your assignment is the handout called Unknown Edges. And just like your work, it should look like mine where you've written out each problem. Don't be lazy. You can call your parents in here right now and they can hear me say that I am okay if you use a calculator to help you with your multiplication and your division, especially when you get those 2-digit divisors. All right, so I also wrote that in the directions in your Google Classroom. All right, see you soon.